computer. Okay. So we're actually talking about a tzaddik today. So in the first parak of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that there are 5 classes of people. There's a tzaddik, the toivlei, a tzaddik and it's good for him, tzaddik viralei, a tzaddik and it's bad for him, a beinani, which is what we're striving to be. There's a rasha, the toivlei, a rasha and it's good for him, rasha viralei, a rasha and it's bad for him. Those are the 5 categories. And in order to understand how to classify people, and not that we have an obligation to classify people, we don't, but to understand that the 5 classes of people, the Alter Rebbe introduces the fact that we each have 2 souls, and how they operate and how they function and their powers and their garments. And then we spoke about the other side of holiness and the klipa, things that distract us and cover up holiness. And basically we said that there is a tug of war, that we are not just one personality, but rather we are made up of 2 parts of this godly soul and this animal soul, and there's a battle. And they're fighting over the city, which is our body. And each of these souls wants full control of the body. So, and that was the new thing that we learned last time, that if I give into my animal soul, it's not going to be satisfied. It's not like it's like when kids kvetch, if I give in, I'm going to get peace and quiet for maybe 1 minute. But then if the kid is kvetchy and tired or whatever it is, then they're going to find the next thing to cry about very, very soon after. So by giving into the animal soul, you're not really helping yourself, because the animal soul will never be satisfied until it has full control of your body 24/7. So when I overpower it, I'm actually helping myself for next time by giving the godly soul more strength. Because just giving in, it's like a 2-state solution. There is no such thing as a 2-state solution. If I give, cut Israel in half, that's not going to solve anything, because Hamas or the Palestinians, they're not going to be satisfied with whatever you give them. Whatever you give them, they're just going to want more. They're not going to be rest until they, and from their perspective, until they get the whole of Israel, until all the Jews are in the sea. Right.
So you're creating a monster when you give in, you're saying.
Right, because the animal soul will never be satisfied until it has full control. And the same with the godly soul. The godly soul will never be satisfied until it has full control. So that was a new concept to keep in mind, that I can't just give the animal soul a pacifier and say, okay, if you come to the Tanya class, then I'll give you what you want. It's not. They're not willing to share. They're not willing to share the body. Each one wants full control. So now that we have all this information, we have a lot of information. We have 2 souls. Learning how they operate. We learn their powers. There's emotions. There's 7 emotions. There's 3 intellectual powers. There's thought, speech, and action. And we spoke about the godly soul's actual piece of Hashem. The animal soul, it gets its energy from something called klipa. Klipa is the other side of holiness. And there's klipas noiga, there's klipa that we could elevate, and there's klipas netmeas, 3 impure shells, peels, husks that we can't elevate unless you do such a great tshuva that that the sins turn into merits. All this is what we said until now. Now that we have all this information, now we're able to see how it plays out in the 5 classes of people. So what we're going to do is, first, we're going to talk about a tzaddik. Then we're going to talk about a rasha. And then the rest of it, we're going to talk about a beinani, which is what we want to be. So you could say, hey, what do I need to learn about a tzaddik for? I'll never be a tzaddik. And why do I need this information? So the reason why we need this information is because when I understand what a tzaddik is, it's going to help us understand what a Beinoni is. You have to define. And we promised before we were born that we're going to be a tzaddik. So what oath did we take? So we have to understand what a tzaddik is. And also throughout our history, there's so many stories, tzaddikim. We have to understand what the greatness and the uniqueness of what a tzaddik is. And we always say, even if we haven't fully attained, sorry about that, even if we haven't fully attained the level of a Beinoni, or I'm in the middle of a class. Okay, okay. Okay. Even if we haven't attained yet the level of a Beinoni or level of a tzaddik, sometimes we have a Beinoni moment or a tzaddik moment. So let's understand the value of a tzaddik, how great a tzaddik is, and even if we could have a tzaddik moment, is also something to aspire to. Okay. So also one more thing that we spoke about last time, which is very important, and that is that, okay, so we have the godly soul, and then we have this animal soul. And so the godly soul wants to connect to Hashem, right? But what is the animal soul's agenda? What does it really, really want? And we spoke to how we ended off the last time was that the animal soul, what it really, really wants is it wants to fail. The whole point of the resistance is so that we should overcome it. And we gave a mashal of a king who had a son who wanted to test his son. He wanted to prove that his son is, moral and honest and upstanding. So he brings the Zaina to try to seduce the son, but she has to do what the king asked her, but she hopes to fail.
Who is the king testing his son for? For his son to know his own klefus, or for the world to know?
So it's both. Yeah, it's for us to become better people, and it's for the world and it's for us to be a light unto the nations, to be a role model for the world. So the whole
resistance builds strength.
Yeah.
Makes them stronger.
That's for
Right.
us.
Yeah.
But he's also testing us so that the world sees we're upright people.
Yeah. But what a lesson it is. What a lesson it is for the world to see that as much as there's such anti-Semitism and persecution, everything else, that we're still have such strong belief in Hashem. Think of the Nazis, the Jews marching to the gas chambers singing Ani Maamin, the fact that they failed so miserably because they tried so much to break our spirit. They broke our bodies, but they couldn't break our spirit, and they wanted to break our spirit. So the whole point of the resistance is only to bring out our inner strength. So that was chapters 1 to 9. And now we're able to start understanding the personalities, these 5 classes of people, or 3 classes of people, tzaddik, rasha, beinoni, more in general. Okay. The truth is that the Alter Rebbe actually wrote a Sefer Shel Tzaddikim, and there was a fire in the shtetl and it was burnt. And the Alter Rebbe never rewrote it because obviously our job is to be beinonim and not tzaddikim. But we still need this part to have appreciation for a tzaddik, and to be able to understand what a beinoni is through understanding what a tzaddik is. So a few questions. Does a tzaddik eat?
Yeah.
Does a tzaddik eat dessert?
Not necessarily.
Can a tzaddik own a business?
Yeah.
What is it? Or is a tzaddik someone who only sits and learns 24/7?
No.
So we're going to go back to these questions at the end. Okay. Okay. So first thing we have to understand is that even within a tzaddik, you could borrow the term tzaddik, and then there's the essence of a tzaddik. And so if my son sheared his toy, I could say, "Oh, you're such a tzaddik." Or if someone stopped, if I had a flat tire and someone stopped and helped me, "Oh, you're such a tzaddik." But I'm saying you're such a tzaddik based on one action in 1 hour of one day of someone's life. So it's not really a true definition of an essence of a person. I'm just judging based on one action. So the Tanya is going to tell us what a tzaddik is for real, like the essence of a tzaddik. For example, if a person goes to some kind of event and they see their doctor at the event, and the doctor says, "Oh, you look so good." That's very different than going to the doctor and having a physical and actually, and actually knowing that the person is in good health. So because you look good is very different than actually being good. And it's the same thing you could use. So the term tzaddik, you have to ask yourself, am I borrowing the term? Is it actually describing the person? And even if it is describing the person, how is it the true essence of the person for long term? What do I mean by that? If a soldier if a soldier is fighting in Gaza, for example, and they're ready to give up their life for the Jewish people, are they a tzaddik? Of course they're a tzaddik. And if they die al Kiddush Hashem, are they a tzaddik? Of course they're a tzaddik. And if they give up their life for another Jew, of course they're a tzaddik. If they take a bullet for someone else, of course they're a tzaddik. They take a bullet or they die al Kiddush Hashem, they reach the level of a tzaddik, they become a tzaddik, but they didn't live their entire life investing unbelievable energy to be on this level of a tzaddik, to live as a tzaddik. You could die as a tzaddik, you could die and be a tzaddik, or you could live your whole life and work very, 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 very hard to live as a tzaddik. So that's also a difference. So what we're going to learn today is, what does it mean to live? To live as a tzaddik your whole life, to invest incredible energy, to work incredibly hard to reach this level of a tzaddik, not just one incredible action that makes you become a tzaddik in 1 second.
Okay, I'm confused. If you're working very hard, aren't you then abandoning?
Okay, so excellent question. I asked my husband this question this morning. If you when you open up the Tanya, you'll see the question is: are you born a tzaddik, or you do work to become a tzaddik?
No, tzaddik doesn't have the struggle. He's given it again.
Okay, so could be that in other places we're going to learn other things, but when you're focusing on chapter 10 of Tanya, it's talking about a person who works very hard to attain the level of a tzaddik. Maybe he was born with the potential to be a tzaddik, but it's not automatic. He has to work very, very hard. So a Benini works very, very hard, but you could either work very, very hard your entire life, or you could work very, very hard until you attain the level of a tzaddik.
You're not working hard your whole life. You're working to get there, and then you're there.
And then you're there.
Oh, wow.
So for most of us, we're going to struggle our whole life. But there is a concept of a person working so hard, doing the best they can and they work so hard that you can't even know the difference between a Benini and a tzaddik, because on the outside, a Benini and tzaddik looks the same.
The Benini could become a tzaddik.
A Benini could become a tzaddik, and with extreme work, and it is a gift. At that point, they'll get a gift from Hashem. Hashem will help them to become a tzaddik. And it could be they were born with a potential to be a tzaddik, but if you're just born with a potential, doesn't necessarily mean that you will become a tzaddik. You know that Esav, his neshama, came from a higher place in Yaakov. And that's why Yitzchak wanted to give him the brachos. Because Yitzchak saw his potential. But just because you have incredible potential doesn't mean that you're going to actualize it. So you'll see right in the beginning of the definition of a tzaddik that it requires incredible amount of work. Okay.
It was Avram Avinu. Work.
Right.
Until he became Avram Avinu.
Yeah. He had to discover Hashem.
Right.
He had to smash the idols. It was a journey. Yes.
Wow.
Okay. So we already understand that to describe someone that their tzaddik in essence is not so simple. It's not just one incredible action that they do that they become a tzaddik, but rather it's something much more complex. Now, there are two or a few very, very common mistakes when we try to define a tzaddik. So what if you had to define a tzaddik, what would you say? What is a tzaddik?
A good person.
You're saying the way we use a borrowed term? Or
No, for real. If you wanted to define a tzaddik for real, how would you define a tzaddik? Okay, someone who's very close to Hashem.
Someone doesn't have a stop. Like he lives for Hashem.
Someone who lives for Hashem.
Pretty much.
Okay, so what people usually say is that a tzaddik is someone who's very dedicated to Hashem, meaning that they have great behavior, and they never sin, so they don't have bad behavior, and that is true. A tzaddik obviously will behave in a perfect way, but that's not the definition of a tzaddik. And another thing that people would say, we didn't say it here, but another thing people would say, what's a tzaddik? A tzaddik is someone who's very invested in learning Torah, a brilliant individual. Someone who knows the entire Torah is a tzaddik. So a tzaddik could be brilliant and know a lot of Torah, but again, that is not the definition of the essence of a tzaddik.
Not a requirement to know the whole Torah back and forth and
right. It's not 1 + 1 is 2. It's not that if I know the whole entire Torah and the more Torah I know, the greater tzaddik I am. This was the mistake in the time of the Baal Shem Tov. There was a very big divide between the Talmidei Chachamim and the simple people. They didn't even daven in the same shuls. And the Baal Shem Tov came around and he showed them that you could be a big Talmid Chacham and not a tzaddik, and you could be a simple yid who only knows how to read Tehillim, and that could be a tzaddik.
When it came time for shidduchim for my girls, and Reduv told us, I don't care how many pages he turns, go check out how he davens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Why is it? Because someone who's very intellectually capable, it doesn't tell us anything about their spiritual development. If Hashem gave you brains, it's a gift.
It's a responsibility. I feel like if someone is so brilliant, they have more responsibility to do more with their life.
100%. But a tzaddik, it's not based on, to be a tzaddik is not, the definition of a tzaddik is not based on your intellectual ability and how smart you are, and the gift that Hashem gave you to be so smart, but it's a moral choice. Your brains, how smart you are is not a choice. Your intellectual ability is not a choice, but a tzaddik is a moral choice. That's where we're headed.
Like we had all the philosophies.
Yeah. So and look at today. Look at the college kids today. Look at the professors. They're supposed to be the most brilliant people, and look how they act. To go against Israel and all the.
That's the moral level that they're.
Right. And look at the Nazis.
Yeah,
they were pretty smart.
Look around at the tzaddikim that we always refer back to. They were all brilliant.
Not always, I don't but some of them were sorry, the one that sat there.
Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva.
So all we're saying is that being smart or being a huge guy and a Talmid Chacham and a Rosh Yeshiva, that is not the definition of a tzaddik. A tzaddik could be smart and it could be brilliant.
If your Torah doesn't impact you, then it's not.
100%.
You could learn all Torah, but if it doesn't translate into your actions and
Well, I
behaviors
learned
and
that
thoughts.
So when you learn Torah, what it does is Torah teaches you about the greatness of Hashem and to be bit, to have bittul. So if you're learning Torah for the right reasons, then absolutely it's a great asset, and it's something that a tzaddik that a tzaddik very possible for a tzaddik to be very brilliant, but that's not that's not the definition. We're going to see what the definition is in a second. Okay. The level of intelligence is not what defines a tzaddik. A tzaddik is, and a tzaddik is also, he's not defined by his behavior. What do we mean by that? For some people, because of their personality, they may enjoy learning Torah. It may be more enjoyable for them to sit and learn Torah 24/7 for their whole life than to go and make a living. It's not hard for them. They enjoy it. So again, not that Torah should be enjoyable, but again, the definition of a tzaddik, it's not based on behavior, and it's not based on how much you know. It's not based on behavior because just because you're learning Torah and just because you're doing a mitzvah, that is not the definition of a tzaddik, because also a benini could do a mitzvah. Also a benini could learn Torah. What makes a tzaddik unique? It's not the mitzvah action, and it's not the Torah learning that's making him unique. There's something else. There's something that we're getting to. We're building up to understand what is the definition. What is the definition of a tzaddik? What makes a tzaddik different than everybody else? And let me see if I could. It's so powerful that I want to read it straight from the Tanya. See if I still have the tab open on my phone. I do. Okay, this is how chapter 10 starts. You want to know what a tzaddik is? Vihine, kisheh ha'adam magbir nafshay ha'alakis. When a person causes his divine soul to prevail over the animal soul. The word is a magbir. You have the word gevura, vir. And magbir is a verb, it's an action. What does he do? He overpowers when his godly soul overpowers his animal soul. V'nilcham kol kach. And he wages war. Now remember, if the Alter Rebbe write the word nilcham, he didn't just choose that word lightly. It took him 20 years to write the Tanya, these 53 chapters. Every word is exact. He waged war against the animal soul. Ad shemegaresh umevaer hara sheba mechalal hasmali. He wages war against the animal soul to the extent that he banishes and eradicates its evil from its abode within him, namely the left part of the heart. And the rest of the class is just going to be to understand this
So
thing.
there's no Ra left in him, like we quoted David in the beginning of time, like there's nothing bad in him anymore.
Right. So that is the general definition of a tzaddik, and then we're going to go into two levels within a tzaddik. But what it's saying is that he overpowered his opponent in battle.
So it's not the way we said in the beginning that a tzaddik was just because Hashem created him without a struggle. He struggled enough that he doesn't struggle anymore. The beginning was his work.
Yeah, that's what we're learning. That's what we're learning. Our natural state is to be selfish, like a baby. And what's the most difficult thing for us to do in life is to do something that we don't want to do. Our nefesh habahamis only cares about what makes me feel good. To do something that go against my nature, that's very, very hard. That's very, very hard for us to do. And the nefesh habahamis is the stronger one, and it is the one that's more accessible. That's how we're designed.
And it gets a head start also.
It gets a head start also, and so we have to understand that a tzaddik is someone. Expect a battle. There's a war going on here. And all of us battle every single day. We all struggle. But the uniqueness of a tzaddik is how much did you fight the battle?
Well, while he's battling, he's not a tzaddik yet. It's when he leaves him.
Exactly. So everyone battles. The question is, how successful were you? How much did you throw yourself into the battle? A tzaddik is so successful, his divine soul, his nefesh elokis fought so successfully against the animal soul to the extent that it forces the negative soul, it forces the negative out of the left side of the heart. Okay, so our heart, metaphorically speaking, there is a right side and a left side of the heart. Metaphorically speaking, the animal soul lives in the left side of the heart. And what it says, the animal soul, we always say the animal soul itself is not evil. But so the animal soul is not evil, but you're taking the evil of the animal soul and you're kicking it out. So I had this thought, perhaps what we're saying is, because we say there's an animal soul and there's a Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination. You're kicking the evil inclination out of the animal soul. That's a tzaddik.
Does he still have struggle? In every single part of his life, he doesn't have any.
So basically, a tzaddik is, what we're learning today is that what makes a tzaddik? It's not how much Torah you learn. It's not the mitzvah that you did. A tzaddik is that your animal soul battled so strongly your godly soul battled so strongly against your animal soul that you actually kicked out the bad, and now you won over the opponent, and now you will not struggle anymore.
The battle, you won the whole war. I mean, we had constant battles.
Right.
The tzaddik won the whole
You won the war.
Then why is he on this world?
Why is he on this world? To help us, to guide us, to lead us.
It's not about his avodah. It's not about him. It's about for us. It's not for him that he's on this world anymore.
So a tzaddik yisoid olam. The world needs a tzaddik to keep this world in existence, and we need tzaddikim to
connect us.
Yeah,
to help us connect.
Yeah. So absolutely, a tzaddik's avodah is not for any selfish thing, because he got rid of the ego. He got rid of the self. There is no self. It's all to serve Hashem. His whole purpose is only to serve Hashem. And you said that, because when we define the tzaddik, you said it's someone who's only here to serve Hashem. And that is a good definition of a tzaddik.
You're saying a human being has the ability to do that. To me, that sounds like an angel. It's not human. It's
much more than an angel. A tzaddik is much higher than an angel.
Right, but I'm saying, but like, if there's no battle anymore, then like, if I could, for a human being to go that far, that there is no self left, like it's our instinct.
Have that when Mashiach comes.
Exactly. So both this week, we learned on Monday a teaching about Mashiach. And in very, very short, there's a contradiction. In the Rambam, seeming contradiction, the Rambam wrote the Yad HaChazaka, which is 14 books. At the end of the entire Mishnah Torah, there are two chapters, 11 and 12, which is called Hilchas Malachim. It's talking about Mashiach. Chapter 11 speaks about who Mashiach is. Chapter 12 speaks about what the world's going to look like when Mashiach comes. And the beginning of chapter 12 says, Al ya'ala al da'atcha. Don't even think, it shouldn't even come up in your mind that when Mashiach comes, anything is going to change from the natural order of things. That the world is going to still run in a regular, natural way. That's what he says, and it's halacha. And yet, the Rambam himself says that there's Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah, 13 principles of faith, and the last is of Tchias HaMesim. Now, what's more unnatural than Tchias HaMesim? So what is it? Is the world going to, and he says the world is going to run regular. The only thing that's going to change is that we're not going to have we're not going to be subjugated for our enemies, and we're able to sit on Torah a whole day. But that seems like a contradiction. Then we say this Tchias HaMesim. So which one is it? So after a lot of back and forth and proofs and different discussions and the Ravid and back and forth, ultimately the Rebbe's Chiddush is that there's two tkufais in Yemais Mashiach. There's two stages. Stage number one is it's going to be a natural world and the enemies won't bother us, and we'll be the entire whole day. And then it's going to be stage two when we're going to have incredible miracles. And then at the end of the teaching, the Rebbe says, how's this going to play out? There's one of two ways. if we're not zeicha, then we haven't become our true selves, then Mashiach has to come. It's halacha, it has to happen. So if we haven't reached our potential and we haven't um, um, become who we really are meant to be and become our true selves, then we need Mashiach to come. And we need to not have to worry about parnasa and everything else, and enemies and wars and everything else. And then we could still learn Torah a whole day. And then Mashiach will help us reach a place where we are our true selves. When we become our true selves, then we will become very beloved in the eyes of Hashem. And when we become very beloved in the eyes of Hashem, then we will be zeicha to all the miracles.
Which looks likely that's the way we're going right now.
But the Rebbe says no.
Okay.
The Rebbe says, how about if in Golus we could in Golus be our true selves? If we and we could perform, I'll just back up a little bit. There were a group of Hillel students, college kids, that came to the Rebbe to interview the Rebbe, and they asked the Rebbe if he could perform miracles. And the Rebbe said, when someone is so spiritual and involved in spirituality all the time, then they could perform miracles. And then the Rebbe said to them, you know what? We could all perform a miracle together. Think about something that you feel that you cannot do. And then with the inspiration of being here, now go and do it. And if you go beyond your nature to do something that you think you can't do, you have just performed a miracle. That's what a miracle is. A miracle is something beyond nature. Now, all of us have the ability to go beyond our nature and to perform miracles for ourselves, for our family. Every single day we can be, we could.
Pesach was a miracle.
So we could perform miracles. We could perform miracles. We could go beyond our nature, beyond what seems impossible. We could perform miracles. And when we go beyond our nature and become our true selves in Galus, then we'll become beloved to Hashem when we're still in Galus. And then as soon as Mashiach comes, we will immediately have the miracles. We won't have to wait because we're already so beloved in the eyes of Hashem because we went beyond our nature in Galus. That's
Every
how.
time you get up in the morning and get out of bed and start doing
100%.
we're doing.
So the fact that we're living in such a bitter galus, and the fact that after October 7th and all the other things, and we're still so
Yes.
connected and believe in Hashem and trust in Hashem and are so committed and connected, of course we're beloved in Hashem's eyes already now, and we go beyond our nature now. Things don't make sense to still serve Hashem now, and then we will, and so we are able to go beyond ourselves, beyond what we think we could do, beyond our nature now. And this is how we're going to merit that as soon as Mashiach comes, we'll have the miracles right away. We're not going to have to wait till stage number 2. We'll already have the miracles as soon as Mashiach comes. So we are able, when there's enough.
But that's overcoming self in this area and that area. But you're saying that tzaddik there's no more self left. It's just about serving God.
And
Which is almost like the opposite of what a human being's
Yes.
naturally
Yes.
created. It's
Yes.
fighting all his humanness.
Yes.
It's going above all his
Yes.
humanness, which is like.
So if we can't be a tzaddik fully, but maybe we could have a tzaddik moment, and sometimes we surprise ourselves and we could do the impossible. I'll just say very, very quick, or very, I don't know if it's cute or whatever. So on the Chol Hamoed, my daughter's a Kala Baruch Hashem, and her mother-in-law sent her a gift, and it arrived on Chol Hamoed. And I was like, okay, we need to do something back, because the way it works in our system is the Kala gets a necklace, and then the Chassan side gets a watch for the Chassan. So we told the Chassan to choose a watch, and then he said that he didn't want to watch. He would rather Sfarim, or maybe a Menorah, whatever it is. But he didn't want to watch because he didn't feel that he was going to wear an expensive watch. So L'Payel, he didn't actually get anything from us. I called the silver store, get himself a Menorah, whatever it is. But ultimately, he didn't. She has this necklace. She has another gift. I felt like we didn't do anything. And also the chassan's birthday is on Shvi Shal Pesach. And now it's Chol Hamoed, and I'm feeling like, we really need to do something. So my husband's like, oh, why don't you, maybe we could send him a becher. He's in Florida for Pesach, and we could send him a becher. So I'm like, okay. So that night, on my phone, I go to Elite Sterling, which is a silver store. They have a branch in Crown Heights and Borough Park, and we know the owner of the store. And I find this beautiful becher. And I'm like, okay, are they going to be open on Chol Hamoed? The next day, 11 a.m. is when they're supposed to open. I call Borough Park, I call Crown Heights. No one's picking up the phone. I figure, okay, they're closed. I call my mother. See, Mom, maybe do you have his cell phone number? Maybe, I don't know, he could help us out. My mother said, Hani, there is no way you're getting a silver becher on Chol Hamoed. Everyone's in Florida. It's not happening. And my husband also says, like, Hani, you're wasting your time. It's not possible. Everything's closed. So I was like, okay, 1 second. I can't take no for an answer. When someone is beloved, you could go beyond that. So I went on to WhatsApp and I wrote, does anyone know any silver store that's open on Chol Hamoed? One person responds to me. I have the cell phone number of someone who owns a silver store in Lakewood, actually, Howell. He's a very nice guy.
He lives here.
He lives here? Okay.
Yeah, so again.
Okay, so you'll tell him the story. You'll tell him the story. So
I
he
was thinking, as
said,
you're saying it, like, you should have called me, I would have called him and asked him.
Wow.
You would have.
so
What? He's not the type of guy that's bad, he'll go into the store.
So I get his cell phone number. He's on a Chol Hamoed trip. We're on a Chol Hamoed trip. He says, when I get back, I'll let you know. He texts me at 5:15. He's back. He could open the store for me. I'm still 2 hours away. So I said, okay, I'll let, I'm not getting home till after 7. I'll text you when I get home. He said, sure, no problem. Fine. Now it's 7:15. We're parked in Bingo, which is 7 minutes from my house. My husband just went out to get a couple of things for supper. So I text him. I said, okay, can I meet you at 8:00? He said, sure. I figured it takes me 7 minutes to get home. It takes me half an hour to drive to Howell. Everything, I could do it. But my husband was in the car. It was still in the store. He comes out of the store, and then right out. So my van is parked, and then right near the van, there was a cell phone on the floor. My husband picks up the cell phone. Okay, now he's going to try to figure out who it belongs to return it to them. He calls the last number. It was belonged to the person that picked up the phone. His wife was one who had lost the phone. I has to go into Bingo and give it to customer service. That takes an extra 10 minutes. He comes back to the car, and I'm like looking at the clock. Now there's 0 gas in the car. We have been driving on 0 gas, and now she's like, okay, I'll just go to Costco, get gas, and we'll come home, and then we'll go home. Get to Costco, the lines are crazy. I said, listen, I told the guy I'll be there at 8:00. He's like, okay, no problem. Just drive a little bit further to a different gas station. Won't be a wait. Everything's fine. We start driving and the car stops. There's no gas. Now it's already 7:20. I don't know what. And we're literally stuck. I'm like, how? And this guy's opening the store for me. It's not happening. I'm like, what do we do now? Okay, who knows how long to Chaverim to come, whatever. My husband said, he's very calm, cool, and he said, okay, just take an Uber. I said, just take an Uber. It's over, right? There's no hope. So the Uber comes, I get into the Uber, the Uber takes me home, I take my van, I get to the silver store at 8:02. And he opens up the store, I get his most gorgeous becher. And now this is already, that was Wednesday night. So now Thursday morning, I now have to get it to Florida. And Friday is Easter Friday. I don't know if there's mail. Anyway, we overnighted it. It got there. And the mother sent me a message after Yantif that was so special. He used the becher on Friday night. It was Shvi Yosef Pesach, was his birthday, and it's amazing. But so I'm saying is, it was impossible to get a becher on Chol Hamoed, right? And now now there's no gas in the car. It's impossible. How am I getting to Howell at 8:00? It's impossible. But we could go beyond when there's enough love. When there's enough love, we could do the impossible. When we're really, really committed to Hashem, when we really love Hashem so much, what's not possible could become possible.
I mean, I feel like Hashem gives you these stories you should have how to teach us.
It was crazy. I'm like, if only he knew what it took to get that back. Why we couldn't think about it before Yantif? I don't know.
Because the whole thing happened before you were,
I knew it was his birthday. I knew that when I saw the resume. Like, why couldn't I think of it before? But that's the story. So yeah, we could go beyond.
That's pretty fun.
It's pretty funny. So you'll tell him the story. He was an angel sent from heaven. So, but it's really So that's the
So
story.
when we love enough, we can do the impossible.
When we love enough, we can do the impossible. So the question is, if we can love enough and do the impossible now, reach our potential now. Okay, I can't be a tzaddik every minute, but a tzaddik moment that I could. We're still working on defining a tzaddik, what a tzaddik is. What we're saying is that it's someone who works very, very hard, that his godly soul should overpower the animal soul and kick the Yetzer Hara out, take the evil out of the animal soul. That's what it is. Okay, because if I have a struggle, should I come to the Tanya class or not? And I say, okay, I'm going to come, and I come, right? Is my animal soul gone? No, because I haven't changed anything. I haven't changed the animal soul. I've just beaten it this round. Okay, that's a tzaddik. A tzaddik either locks up the Yetzer Hara and he's like in jail under lock and key, or he transforms it.
Transform sounds more tempting. How do you do that?
How do you do that?
Locking is still.
Yeah, locking means you kind of still have to watch the lock, you know, like you have to make sure he stays there.
So there's two types of tzaddik. There's tzaddik v'tovlei. So when we think a tzaddik v'tovlei, a tzaddik who has a good life, and a tzaddik v'ralei is a tzaddik who has a difficult life. But tzaddik v'ralei means a tzaddik v'raloi, which means the ra belongs to him. He's in control of the ra.
But it's still there.
But it's still there.
It's not there.
A tzaddik v'tovlei already transformed it. There's only good left. Tzaddik v'tovlei.
Transformed is it that you harness it for good, so now it becomes part of
yeah. Now it's on your team.
Now, what doesn't
So
it
how do you
say
do
that
that?
you should never trust yourself till the day you die?
Yeah.
So how does that work if they
How
transform
come
it?
that's in front of them?
Yeah, how come they could still fall?
So I would have to say that a tzaddik v'tovlei can't fall. But so what is it?
There's like stories in Gemara where like.
Right.
They must
So-
have been tzaddik. Wow, they were tzaddik, but they didn't transform. They just had it under control.
Right. So what would be an example for that is because that itself is a paradox. How can you say you're a tzaddik and tzaddik v'ralei, and you have how could you be an imperfect tzaddik? If you're a tzaddik, then you're perfect. So think of it like, let's say you have a city that's full of crime, and you get police to crack down on the crime, and you also have educational programs so to get the kids off the street and to encourage kids to behave well and give them incentives, etc., etc. But ultimately, anyone who's a hardened criminal ends up being in jail, right? So now, could you say that it's a crime-free city? So the people on the streets are law-abiding. However, you still have these hardened criminals. You still have criminals in your city. There might not be, they're locked up, but they're still there. So if for some reason there's a malfunction in the prison system and somehow all the gates open up and all the criminals can run free, then you're going to be left, then you're going to be in square one again. So for that, I'm saying it's very unlikely that the whole prison will malfunction and everyone will run out the door. But so if a tzaddik, if there's or maybe he thought he was a tzaddik and really he was a Beinoni, that could also be. Because as we said on the outside, a Beinoni and a tzaddik look identical. You can't really tell the difference. And sometimes, especially we'll learn that, especially during davening, a Beinoni could think that he's a tzaddik, especially during davening because it's such a high level. When a Beinoni davens, he's basically like a tzaddik. But if he truly transformed the Yetzer Hara and transformed his animal soul to the good side, then once he transformed it. You can't fall. You can't after that. You could argue that if it's still in jail, maybe that there was a malfunction. There's something went wrong, very wrong.
Let's do one question.
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
once went to a speech, a very famous speaker, and he made a remark that upset me, and I never went back again to him. Said that in Lubavitch, they say we want Mashiach now, and it's not supposed to be like that. You have to say we need Mashiach now. And I got very upset. You don't tell the Rebbe that he's not doing it the right way. To me, it was like chutzpah. Why do we say we want Mashiach now? What's the advantage over wanting as opposed to us needing? Is my question.
It's a very good question. I think that wanting is even a higher level than needing.
Yeah, needing is the need, wanting.
Needing is selfish.
Ooh.
Thank you for clearing it up.
No, you cleared it up.
No, it just,
It's like a needing is selfish and wanting is not.
no, wanting is I want what you want, Abishua. Needing is for me.
Wanting is my desire.
I want what the Abishua wants. You can't say I need what the Abishua needs. The Abishua has his needs and you have your needs. But if I want what Hashem wants, that's me adapting Hashem's wants. That's how
Also, it's just like you're not supposed to suddenly you're in a Mitzrayim, you're tsar, and you're going through something saying, "Oh, I wish Mashiach was here." Not only supposed to want Mashiach when you're in tsar, even by the greatest simcha, we have to want the life of Mashiach and want Mashiach. It's not reserved to just when we're in need that we need Mashiach. We want Mashiach because we know that that's what we want, what the Abishta wants us to want. It's not about need. It's about what we're supposed to feel all the time.
That's amazing. Thank you. That's amazing. So here we're gonna the fact that the fact that we're talking about this concept of not for my selfish reasons, that is ultimately the difference between a tzaddik and everyone else. Because a tzaddik, what does it look like to be a tzaddik? A tzaddik has removed any kind of selfishness from inside of him. And what does it look like for a person to live without being selfish? A person who doesn't have any selfishness within him is a person who, number one, will never get angry. Because why do I get angry? Because you hurt me, right? Something's not going my way. But a tzaddik whose whole existence, his whole everything is all about Hashem and it's nothing about me. And a tzaddik will say to himself, what we spoke about in the car, will never get angry because 4 words, who runs the world? When something happens that doesn't go his way or he doesn't like or someone hurt him, who runs the world? And in fact, Hashem is one that runs the world. So Hashem is one that put this person in my path. And he didn't choose to be there. Hashem chose it. So obviously it's part of my journey. So what about other people suffering? For myself, if something doesn't go my way, I could tell myself who runs the world. But for another person suffering, a tzaddik is never angry if someone does something to him. But a tzaddik, you see, when I'm hurting, someone hurt me, that is anger. I feel angry. That's an emotional response, an instinct, emotional, not thought out response. And when I go to my intellect and I say Hashem runs the world, then I could calm down. A tzaddik doesn't have an impulsive, emotional anger response. But when a tzaddik sees someone else suffering, then he has an objective, intellectual, appropriate way to respond is a benevolent God shouldn't bring suffering on his people. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. So a real tzaddik, his whole life, he has buckets and buckets full of not anger at God, chas v'shalom, but rather from not anger from an emotional, impulsive place, but rather from an intellectual, appropriate place. He says, Ad Masai, how long do you didn't have to suffer?
Which is really also serving Hashem because Hashem wants that reaction from us. He wants us to fight for each other.
Right.
just like you would when you see, when you punish your kid and your other kid comes and helps you, it gives you such nachas.
So going back to our original question, does a tzaddik eat chocolate? Does a tzaddik have dessert? Why do we eat chocolate?
I was gonna say, maybe like he would eat chocolate because it's Shabbos and he wants the, well, but that's tiny, that's also some.
But Shabbos is a mitzvah to have tainug on Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
So I eat chocolate because the left part of my heart tells me chocolate is good for me. I enjoy chocolate. I like the flavor. I need the sugar, whatever it is. If a tzaddik eats chocolate, it's because the only reason why I'll eat chocolate is because it's Shabbos and there's a mitzvah of tainug Shabbos. And the only way I'll eat chocolate since there is a potential through this chocolate to connect to Hashem. By being mevarer it, by elevating it, by making a bracha on it, by using it for Shabbos. The only reason why he would, everything that he does is nothing for himself. It's only for connection to Hashem.
Is that like possible for us regular people? Is that even a goal, or we just work towards it till we get somewhere near them? Is it possible for me to live
So
my
our
life
life is
myself?
not, we're not meant to be, our goal is not to be a tzaddik, our goal is to be a benini, but we're trying to understand the greatness, the uniqueness of a tzaddik. We could start appreciating what a tzaddik is after we learn this parak.
I think once we hit Beinani, then we can go to tzaddik. It's first, let's get to Beinani.
I just want to end with this, okay, yeah. I just want to end, I know that you have to go, so I just want to end this little story, which is very, very telling. And that is the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was a chassid of the Maggid of Mezrich. The first was the Baal Shem Tov, then the Maggid, and then the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe there were other colleagues that were chassidim, students of the Maggid of Mezrich. One of the Alter Rebbe's colleagues was a tzaddik. His name was Reb Shlomo Karliner. And he was a Rebbe of his own right, in his own right. And he was once going to come visit the Alter Rebbe for Shabbos. And so the Alter Rebbe's wife, who always had done all the cooking for so many years, at that point already, she was already older and she had given over all the kitchen responsibilities to her daughter. But now, if Shema Kaliner has come for Shabbos, she wanted to cook. And the daughter also wanted to cook. They came to Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe said to the daughter, let your mother cook and you could season all the food. Because everyone knows that food without seasoning is tasteless. So the Alter Rebbe's wife, she cooked, and she was so used to cooking that she seasoned the food. And then the daughter came and seasoned the food on top and added a little extra salt just to make sure. Comes Friday night, the soup is served, and Shlomo Kaliner takes one bite of the soup and he cannot eat it. It was not edible. It was so salty, it wasn't edible. And Alter Rebbe finished his whole entire soup. So Alter Rebbe turns to Shlomo Kaliner and says, well, what's the problem? So he didn't say, oh, I wasn't hungry. He was straight with him. He said, the soup is not edible. So the Alter Rebbe said to him, didn't the Maggid teach us that you don't eat for the experience of eating, you eat for the experience of connection? And you eat, so we eat, so we're not, the tzaddik is not invested in the materialism of the world, but he eats chocolate. When he eats chocolate, it's a different experience than me eating chocolate. Because a tzaddik who eradicated all the selfishness, all the distraction, all the corruption from himself, anything he's going to do is only have a connection to Hashem. It's nothing about his personal gain or personal pleasure. So in a nutshell, that is a tzaddik. And obviously to be continued. But I want to be able to finish the class so that you could go. Yeah, but that's the point. A tzaddik is someone who overpowered his animal soul, conquered it, got rid of the bad, doesn't experience any selfishness whatsoever, and his whole being, everything that he does, every moment of his life is only to connect to Hashem. That's his whole purpose.
The Benoni still has something in him, I guess.
The Benoni is still battling. He's still struggling. Yeah.
But a tzaddik doesn't have taiva and like ever for anything.
Once he passes that threshold, and he conquered his opponent, he doesn't have taivas anymore.
Thank you so much.
Because what's a taiva? Taiva is I desire. There is no I. It's only about Hashem.
I always tell the story of my father. I told you the story. He had severe Alzheimer's, and it was at a point where he did not know my name. He knew that I'm related to him, or I don't even know what he knew. He came, my sister brought him to my house, and I bring him a bar of chocolate. And I said, Tati, the vice says he never would have eaten it in his lucid years. Weißt du, was das ist? He says, yeah, this is a table. And he tells me,
Wow.
weißt du, was mit der table? Es ist schnell aus, ist alle weggehen. He still had his humor.
Oh, wow, it's
Yes.
amazing. In a class I gave last night, someone was sharing, I don't remember who she said it about, that he would say, no, we shouldn't have ice cream because it's a taiva, whatever it is. And then one time he was by a Shabbos meal and he ate ice cream. Someone said to him, how can you eat the ice cream? You said that no one should have ice cream. He said, oh, this is ice cream. He didn't even know what it was.
Wow.
So
my neighbor, Rabbi Elishevitz, he did not eat any of that. He was really, I don't know if you know Elishevitz? They live in Kensington, actually.
wow.
She's a Blau mother. Yeah. They lived like that. These were my neighbors. They're the ones who inspired me.
Wow.
Yeah. Pesach also. Chicken and potatoes and eggs. Was it? No dairy, no nothing. Wunderst.
So whatever they do, whatever they eat, it's all only for the purpose of connection. It's nothing about the self. That's a tzaddik.
Mm.
So you could so if a tzaddik, I'm saying if a person is doing a mitzvah, it's all about the intention. If a person is doing a mitzvah, learning Torah for selfish reasons, then that's not tzaddik. So two people could be doing the same thing. So again, that's why we're not defining a tzaddik based on action, because the question is, if you're doing the action for a selfish gain, then you're not a tzaddik. A tzaddik is someone who is completely and totally dedicated to Hashem, and is nothing. There's nothing in it for him. There is no self. He took out the selfishness from he kicked it out.
How can we tell if somebody's a tzaddik or not?
So we can't tell. And maybe it's not our place to tell.
I say it's irrelevant. Why would you need to tell?
I don't know.
But the only reason why the only reason why it's good to know who's a tzaddik is to know, to follow in their footsteps.
Right.
You know, but when you see a person, okay, so the truth is that because it's all about intention, so it's very hard to judge. Oh, is he a bini? Is he a tzaddik? But when you're talking about, when you see a person who wants Mashiach so badly, in a true way, not because of personal sorrows or personal sorrow, but because it can't stand the fact that there's pain and suffering in the world for all of world Jewry, and someone who you could see that their whole life is truly given over to Hashem, and it's not about their own pleasure, then you could have a very good chance of knowing this is a real tzaddik. As soon as you could be a big huge Talmid Chacham, if you see a big huge Talmid Chacham getting angry, that's a problem.
Getting angry about what? Maybe it's getting angry for Hashem.
Oh, so the word anger is an impulse, is an emotional impulse, which is coming from the animal soul. If the person is genuinely saddened and upset because of the matzav, of the pain of the Jewish people as a whole, then instead of anger, we have to use a different word. Rabbi Shishel uses the word. Yeah, you're so welcome. You use the word indignation. You know, you have to. It's a different word. You can't use the word anger. You can't use the word anger. Anger is an an instinctive emotional response, which is not coming from which is not appropriate. So it has to truly be for Hashem. We wanted to talk about Pinchas. You know, Pinchas was doing what he's doing for Hashem.
Today they say don't be a Pinchas. Leave that for Pinchas.
Yeah, but I'm saying sometimes you could see when they're tzaddik hadar, you could see that they're
They're completely
yeah.
selfless.
It's not about it. As soon as there's anger, As soon as they're anger, that's a warning
Not
sign.
anger, any emotion, they're always calm because it's not, their self is not mixed into it.
The self is not mixed to it. It mixed
Meaning
in.
whatever it is, there's never a burst of emotion.
It's not a instinctive burst of emotion, but rather it's all coming from an objective,
head.
intellectual
There's no-
place.
It's like you said, Tom.
And you
Your
can
anger is calm.
think of, like, I can think of, like, they're just always, like, they don't get ruffled.
They don't get
Yeah.
rattled. But when they see somebody suffering, they do get rattled.
But not them.
They can't handle seeing somebody suffer.
Because from an objective
Yes.
perspective, a benevolent God should, in a world that the Eibishter, who's such a kind Eibishter, that the fact that there's pain and suffering from an objective place, it bothers them, not from an objective intellectual place. It doesn't make sense.
Not intellectually, I think even viscerally, watching somebody in pain it's too much.
Right. So a tzaddik feels that.
Yes.
A tzaddik feels that. So it's
Yes.
not coming from a place of
Selfishness.
selfishness. Because what happens is sometimes when we hear of a tragedy, so we say so terrible, so terrible, so terrible verbally, but in our heart, we're thinking, at least it wasn't me.
Yeah, there was that story.
So there's still that selfishness. At least it
Yes.
wasn't me. But a tzaddik, when he hears, when he sees someone in pain, he doesn't just say, "Oh, I feel so bad. Oy vey, that's terrible." And in his heart, "Oh, at least it wasn't me." He truly, truly feels the other person's pain and there's no selfishness. It's all true. He's in pain because the other person's in pain.
Right.
You know,
But if you go to that level, it could also be dangerous. To constantly be in pain, and they hear painful stories all day, Tzaddikim. People come to them all the time, like whatever. People came to him all the time with their, and he felt he really felt it, and yet he still lived.
And that's why the true tzaddikim,
Yeah.
their entire life, thanks so much, their entire life, all they wanted was to bring Mashiach.
Right,
Not sometimes.
right.
They screamed, they begged, everything was, we have to bring Mashiach because the world needs Mashiach.
The Rebbe once said it. He said, "Why do we say we want Mashiach now? Why does it have to be right now?" And he said, "Because for every moment that Mashiach is not here, 14 million moments of suffering for the Jews, because at that time there were 14 million people, 14 million Jews. So that's what he literally felt every moment by moment. When we think about it, when we read about it, but he literally felt 14 million moments of pain. He felt every moment.
Because a Rebbe is a neshama klolis and feels the pain of every single neshama. So it's not about him. It's not about,
Right.
it's true.
These were his people, his children.
Yeah.
He cared about each and every one of us like we were truly his children. To say that Rebbe didn't have children, he absolutely had children. He had so many children.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for coming on this journey with us today. And Ritz Hashem will continue next week. Okay.